Good morning, I'm Faye Thompson. This morning we're going to do another family recipe. This time it's chicken and dressing, and I think every member of my family likes this, but especially my youngest granddaughter. She likes it. I remember one year she was on Thanksgiving in another state, and I mailed her a pan of dressing already made, packed it in ice, shipped it overnight, and I told her, her name is Caroline, I told her, I said, Caroline, you're going to have to come home, let me teach you how to make dressing. So sure enough, when she came home, she came over here and we cooked and cooked. About middle of the afternoon, she says, Mama, aren't you tired? I said, oh, a little. She says, I'm just give out. Said, you can work more than I can. But anyway, I enjoy her. She's real sweet. But today we're going to make dressing for Caroline. First of all, we have to start off with a good cornbread. If you don't have a good cornbread, you're not going to have good dressing. And I would say to anyone that makes cornbread with sugar, I would not use that because you don't need the sugar in this dressing. We started off, I've already pre-mixed a cup and a half of Aunt Jemima cornmeal mix. We have 3/4 cup of WR self-rising flour. 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of soda, and that's already mixed up in this bowl. So now we're going to add 2 eggs. I've already measured out the buttermilk. It's a cultured buttermilk, and it's 1 3/4 cup of buttermilk. I have already preheated my oven to 415 degrees, and I have my skillet with 3 tablespoons of shortening melted in it. So now we just have to stir this up and put it in a pan, put it in the oven. Cornbread's very simple to make. I don't know why people have trouble with it. You know, sometimes my daughter loves cornbread, and sometimes I'll mix her all the mix-up, everything except the eggs and the buttermilk, and put it in a little Ziploc bag, and she'll take that with her sometime to California when she's out there. So. And now I'm going to put it in a 450 degree oven. It takes about 15 or 20 minutes. I have been cooking for my family for about 71 years. I'm definitely not a trained cook. All I know is trial and error, sharing recipes with friends, and cooking for the church, and cooking for sick people and for funerals and family. I've done all that for 71 years, so I do have a lot of experience, except I am definitely not a trained cook. Okay, while our cornbread's cooking, I think we're going to start on our Ghibli gravy. We serve a Ghibli gravy, and I don't know if you know what that is or not, but we used to take scraps from a chicken we were cooking, if we're going to make chicken and dressing, like the liver and neck and some pieces like that, and we'd put that we'd boil it and put that in a broth, and I'll show you how to do that. We're going to do the Ghibli gravy. Now, this is some chicken scraps. You can use whatever you want to, and if it's too many, y'all just guess at it. What I've done ahead, I took broth out of the freezer and to make the dressing and everything. So let me do, if I don't want this dripping all over my stove. This recipe we're cutting in half, and we're only going to put 2 cups of broth in it, and we guessed at how much chicken. So the recipe called for 3 eggs, but I've cooked them over here, already boiled the eggs in this little cooker I have. So I'm not going to use all 3 of those eggs. I'm going to use 2 of them. So we have to do that later. We're going to bring this to a boil, and we have to use some flour mixed with water. Sometimes I use cornstarch here instead of flour, but it doesn't make any difference, either one you want to use. I like to get all the lumps out of it. If you don't get the lumps out of it, I always strain it a little bit. We won't need that much in here. It's just something to thicken it up. This is a very simple recipe. Now we're going to put a little salt and pepper. Just enough for... I don't ever season the broth when I put it in the freezer. That's why you can season it and you take it out. Another one of my kitchen toys. You can use this for other things, but it doesn't take any, you can't use anything that has very much pressure, because one time I put something in it. I don't remember what it was, but I messed up the little wires in it. Now that's all of your giblet gravy. It's ready to eat. That's delicious. Okay, we've finished our giblet gravy now, and we ended up with 3 cups of giblet gravy. Okay, we're getting ready to do our dressing now, and I've already cut up 1 large onion and half of a stalk of celery. We cut them up real fine and put it with onion, and now we're going to put broth in it. 16 ounces of broth. Now this broth will go in the dressing when it's, we're going to cook this until it's tender. You just take any kind of chicken, and I like thighs and legs because you can buy those a lot of times on sale. I put this in the freezer, and when you're cooking it, you're going to have quite a bit of fat in it, or you won't have good dressing. When you start cooking your chicken, put cold water on it. Don't put warm water. And be sure and don't cook it too long, because it'll make it stringy if you cook it too long. And the cold water keeps your broth a clearer broth, not as dark. And I like the clear broth better. I take the broth and I strain it. And then I separate the chicken from the bones and the skin and throw the bones away and save the chicken. So there's a lot of uses for the chicken and the broth too, because you see what we're doing with broth here today. Now this is not a chicken stock, it's a chicken broth. The stock is cooked with vegetables in it, but I hardly ever use a stock. I use mostly this chicken broth, because if you got a good rich chicken broth, there's nothing any better. And you can cook potatoes in it. I love boiled potatoes cooked in chicken broth like we have here. Oh, it is. It's ready. Now we have to toast some bread. This recipe, it feeds about, when you brown your bread, it's crispier. It's just better if you toast it, and you toast it to a light brown. Okay, I think our onion and celery is finished cooking, and we're going to turn this off and leave it and wait till we get our breads. We've got our bread in the oven, the light bread, to brown, and when it browns, we'll be ready to start mixing stuff together then. Okay, our celery and our onions have finished cooking. Now, I used a food processor to cut this up because you want it real fine. And most everything in the dressing is cut up real fine. And I even use my hands when I get all the bread and everything in it to finish it off. So, and our bread, we toast it on both sides. It makes it crispier that way, and it makes a better dressing, I think. I preheated the oven for the dressing. Now we cook it on 350 degrees for an hour. So I've got my oven on, and we're about ready to start mixing this together since our bread is finished. We're ready to start mixing our dressing. We'll start putting our bread in here. I normally don't use this bowl, but I'm using it so you can see through it. I thought it'd be better. I think it'll be big enough to hold it. All this has to be chopped up with your hands. A 10-inch cast iron skillet of cornbread and 14 slices of toasted bread. And it makes about a 9 by 13 pan of dressing. So I'm going to spray this pan. I'm just going to spray it a little bit because it will stick some, not much. Used to, My mother would always cook a big hen. That's the way she got the broth for her dressing, and so did my mother-in-law. We all make the same kind of dressing, and all the children, the daughters, on both sides of the family, my husband's side and my side too. We all make the same kind of dressing. But sometimes we used a turkey after I married, but I don't remember having turkey at home before I married because we didn't raise turkeys, we raised chickens. So that my mother would get a fat hen, and that's what we'd have to make the dressing out of. I need to tell you this too. If you're cooking a hen or a turkey, and you have very many spices on it, the broth of it is not going to be very good for your dressing because you don't know how to regulate your spices in your dressing. If I'm going to make dressing out of the broth from a turkey or a chicken, I try not to put much on it because then you don't know exactly how you're going to use the seasoning for your dressing. You know, I told you that my mother and my mother-in-law too made the same kind of dressing, and I have no idea where the recipe came from because that would go way back. My mother lived to be 91. This cornbread is a basic Southern recipe that most farm women used. I don't know about people living in the city. I never did live in the city. But most of the farm people used this same recipe. And I know all my family did. I think our cornbread is cool enough now to start mixing, so we've got to go in here and break it all up. Break the toast up and the cornbread too. I'll just do it with my hands. Okay, we have our bread roughly chopped up or broken up, and we're going to start putting our spices. We have 1½ tablespoon of black pepper, 1 tablespoon of salt. Now, the reason you might wonder why you have less salt than you do black pepper, our cornbread has a seasoning in it. I put a little less salt because of that, if you're wondering why that's different. Now we have 1 tablespoon of sage. And sage is something you better be careful not use the wrong amount on that because it'll sure ruin your dressing. We used 1 onion and 1/2 of the bunch of celery. We chopped it up real good in a food processor. See how fine it is? It has 4 raw eggs in it. It's going to be cooked anyway if you wonder about the eggs. That egg had a double yolk. I like these eggling eggs. I use the jumbo all the time. You don't ever find any bad ones. That's the reason I don't have to worry about breaking them in a separate bowl. You're going to need rich broth for this too. I'll get in this with my hands in a few minutes. There's something you have to remember too about dressing. If you make it too thin, there's not much you can do about it. But if you make it, when it dries out in the oven, sometimes it's a little drier and you want it, just punch some holes in it and pour you some chicken broth over the top of it. And that usually takes care of it. I don't have to get in it with my hand now and really get all this mixed up good together. See, some of that bread's still too big yet. This dressing freezes real good. Between Thanksgiving and Christmas, I make a lot of dressing for my friends and my family, and I'll put it in the freezer. I'll make it because I can't do it all at one time, and because a lot of times I'll make dressing for 200 people, and I give it away, you know, to my friends and my family. So that's what I do almost every year. You know, I'm going to dip that out with a little dipper because it's pretty heavy to lift. Okay, it looks like it's fine. Caroline, we are making this for you, baby. I'll be glad when you can come home. Our dressing is finished for today, and we also have our Ghibli Gravy. Now, you can serve this over the dressing if you want to, or some people doesn't like it. They don't want to do that, so whatever you prefer. And we got our pig here. He may not be a Razorback, but I think it's his cousin. We'll say he's a cousin. I appreciate you watching today, another family recipe, and I hope you cook it someday and enjoy it. And join us for another video for our family recipe.
Where did the recipe come from?
We don't know. It goes way back. Juanita made dressing the same way. Galena used to make good dressing. She made it the same way. Mom and Miss Thompson made it the same way.